Welcome to the Relatively Damaged podcast by damaged parents, where wrecked, tainted, marred people come to learn maybe, just maybe, we're all a little bit damaged. Someone once told me it's safe to assume 50% of the people I meet are struggling and feel wounded in some way. I would venture to say it's closer to 100%. Every one of us is either currently struggling or has struggled with something that made us feel less than, like we aren't good enough, we aren't capable, we are relatively damaged, and that's what we're here to talk about. In my ongoing investigation of the damaged self, I want to better understand how others view their own challenges. Maybe it's not so much about the damage. Maybe it's about our perception and how we deal with it. There's a deep commitment to becoming who we are meant to be. How do you do that? How do you find balance after a damaging experience? My hero is the damaged person, the one who faces seemingly insurmountable odds to come out on the other side whole. Those who stare directly into the face of adversity with unyielding persistence to discover their purpose. These are the people who inspire me to be more fully me, not in spite of my trials, but because of them. Let's hear from another hero. Today's topic includes sensitive material which may not be appropriate for children. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as advice. The opinions expressed here were strictly those of the person who gave them. Today we're going to talk with Sophia Norley. She has many roles in her life: daughter, mother, sister, writer, and more. We'll talk about how she was the girl who watched over her parents and still feels like an imposter today. Let's talk. Welcome to the show, Sophia. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. So when you came on to the show to talk about a struggle you've had in your life, and you sent me a snippet from your book that I felt deeply, and you've offered to go ahead and read that for us so that maybe the audience could have a better understanding of that moment in your struggle.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to. Yes. The chapter is called I Watched Him Bleed. I lay in bed listening to the raised voices circling through the rest of the flat. This fight has been going on for at least an hour, and it was already 1:30 in the morning. God, how I wish they would give the pub a rest. Then on reflection, I guess they would still drink at home. It wouldn't make a blind bit of difference, though they might fight earlier, which would benefit me and my schooling greatly. I heard a huge crash. Something obviously went flying through the air and landed against a wall. Things seemed to be escalating as there was another crash. This time I heard my mother scream, the banging and crashing continuing around the front room for what seemed like an hour, but in reality was only a couple of minutes. Then the front room door slammed. At least I will be able to get some sleep now, I whispered to myself. But really my head was racing and my mind was whizzing around with the scenes that played out in my head, to go with the noises that I've just heard. I then heard a blood-curdling scream, which in itself wasn't strange. But what was strange and extremely shocking was that it was my stepfather, not my mother. "What have you done, you bitch?" he flung at her. "Call an ambulance." "Call it your fucking self, arsehole. I'm going to bed," I heard my mum spit back. With that, I heard my mum's bedroom door shut and rustling in the kitchen. Then I thought I'd heard the front door shut. So with that, I got up to see what had been going on. However, as I left the safety of my room, I saw my stepfather, that huge beast of a man, standing at the front door with a pair of scissors sticking out of his chest, with a dirty tea towel wrapped around them. We stared at each other in complete shock for a brief moment, him with anger in his eyes, which actually wasn't unusual, and me with panic. I retreated back into my room and swiftly jumped back into bed. What had I just seen? Whatever it was, I knew the best thing to do was to stay where I was and to say nothing at all to anybody.
Wow. When I read that, and as you read it, to us just now, I felt alone. When that incident happened for you, what were your feelings? What did that physically feel like?
Alone is a really good word. I spent my childhood feeling fear, anxiety. I was always on high alert and alone. I constantly felt I was the alone child. It didn't matter if I was at home or at school, that feeling followed me everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I felt fear and abandonment.
And when you felt the fear, how did that physically manifest itself? Was it a tightness in your tummy, tension?
Probably tension. As a child, yeah, I was always tense. I was always, even though I used to go off in little dreams in my imagination, it used to take me away. I was always quite sad, even when I spent time with my grandparents, who I adored and who were perfect. I was always a very sad child. It just seemed to follow me around. Yeah, and I was always just wanting to hide. I wanted to hide a lot as a child, and I carried that on into adulthood, in fact, until very recently. Yeah, I just wanted to be not seen, not heard, not get in the way, and not being involved in any of those dramas. I knew that was best, to stay quiet.
So was this a nightly thing? Not of course, the scissors in the chest, but was this like did it seem like every night or every day, or was it like a weekly thing? I mean, how often were you experiencing this? And also with that, how old do you think you were when that happened?
That I was, I mean, a lot of my for some reason, the age of my memories, they morph into each other, but I think I was around 7 or 8. But yeah, it's hard to pick through memories like that, because I kind of buried them for so long. So yeah, I think about 7 or 8. What was your first question again? I've forgotten now.
How often was this happening for you?
So violence was not an everyday thing, but definitely an every week thing. Alcohol, drugs within the home, criminals, that bad vibe, that was life. That was norm. I had no idea what we perceive as normal now was back then. It was very erratic, it was high tension, a lot of high tension. Yeah, a lot of experiences like that, where there was violence, alcohol, police raids, things like that. It was pretty constant. Yeah.
So I would think it'd be really hard to feel safe. And, one of the things that you had read about was, it would benefit you and your school greatly. So I'm thinking there was an impact on schooling. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, my mum, she was an alcoholic, so everything was very erratic. She would always like lots of people around her, so we'd have lots of people around night, early morning. She'd always have the radio playing, because even if there was people there or not people there, she didn't want to be alone. So I didn't get a lot of sleep. It was very erratic. And when my younger sister came along, I felt very responsible for her. So I took that on board. I loved school because it was an escape. I wasn't very good at school. I couldn't spell. I couldn't read very well until sort of late teenage years. It was just where I kept persevering, and I carried a little dictionary around with me to look up words, and that helped. And in fact, I still have that, and it's quite threadbare now. My girls laugh. But yeah, I loved school. I would have loved to go to college and do something more creative. I didn't have the opportunity. So because in that environment, your options are pretty limited, really.
Yeah. I mean, so even with schooling, it sounds like your parents probably didn't help with homework and things like that. Like, give us an example of a day in the life of you as a child, besides this one, and that was a night. So, because
no, they would never help. My mum was even though she was this character, she was highly intelligent. Unfortunately, she made wrong choices that took her on a path that she unfortunately couldn't get herself off. But she was highly intelligent and very creative. We had piles of books all around us all the time. And she was very eager for me to not be treated how she was treated and to do something better. However, she couldn't follow through on any of that. She just had the words and sometimes when she was sober, like one time I can remember we used to act out Oliver Twist, me and her, and things like that. But they're very far and few between. I would go to school and sometimes I'd come home and she wouldn't be there and I'd be sitting on the doorstep in the pouring rain. We had times where she disappeared for 3 days. That was quite regular once I became a teenager. So I would look after my little sister.
How much younger was your little sister?
She was, she's nine years younger than me.
Okay, so you really did kind of take on a parenting role then, because I think it's after 8 years, it's like having another only child, right? So you were.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely did a lot more than I should have done. Yeah, I really cared for her. My mum would disappear. She went off to prison several times and we got farmed out and things like that. It was an interesting upbringing. And before I actually accepted how bad it was, I used to call it bohemian because I thought that I had to hide it. I thought no one would like me if they knew my backstory, that I would never be able to achieve anything. So I used to put this little tag on it. Yeah, and when I realised actually I had nothing to do with my childhood, I was just there. It wasn't I didn't make those choices. I felt so embarrassed and so much shame. As a child and as an adult, it carried on. I just felt beneath everyone, and that started at childhood, obviously. Yeah, I mean, my mum used to take me shoplifting, taught me how to shoplift. That was our day. Most days I would go to the shop and shoplift because I had to.
So mom was off doing something and then maybe you and sister needed to eat, so you would just go shoplift food and things like that?
Yeah, definitely.
It just seems to me like that would be a super kind of desperate place to be. And what was it? I mean, did you know better, or did you, but it was the only choice you could make in that moment? Tell me about what was going on in your mind right then.
I think when I was younger, I obviously didn't know any different. I thought everyone's mum was like that. That was normal life. Even though I used to go and stay with my nan and granddad, maybe on a Saturday night, and they were completely different, proper, British, old-fashioned, and it was lovely, and I adored them. So I knew there was something different, but it was as I grew and I started to realise my mum has a problem with drink, my mum has a problem with drugs, these people that are in our house are no good. And I did try to help her. I would tip alcohol down the sink, and obviously none of that made any difference. I started to know as I became sort of a young teenager that these things weren't right, but quite frankly I didn't have a choice back then. At some points we wouldn't have eaten if I didn't do that, and she was my mum and I was fearful. I mean, not she did hit me, but I was fearful that we wouldn't live more than anything else. It was
that you wouldn't live. Is that what you said? That you wouldn't live more than anything else?
Yeah, not as in I would die, but as we wouldn't be able to survive. We needed food. We needed this. This is just how we got by. But I mean, I left home as soon as I could. I left home probably the first time when I was just about 16. I had to go back briefly, but as soon as I could leave, I left, because I knew that if I didn't distance myself from that environment, I would very quickly go down that same path. So yeah, I went out on my own and did the best that I could. Got a job, got a bed sit, and that's where I started sort of my own little life. But I still carried all that shame around and embarrassment, and still fearful, and I hadn't healed. So you carry things along, don't you? if you haven't dealt with things. Yeah.
So I heard you say that mom went to prison or sometimes, and was dad not around after this incident? Or
no, my biological dad left I think I was about 1. They split up. He lived very near us, but I wasn't very close. He had another family and had moved on, basically. And if it wasn't for my grandma, who was his mother, I probably would never have got to see him. So he wasn't really interested. My stepfather, thankfully, they had broke up because they were very volatile, obviously, from that part in the story. So, yeah, basically, it was just my nan and granddad. But I don't think they actually knew a lot of what was going on. It was only later, sort of, as I grew up, I think they understood a lot more.
So you said it's Nan and Grandpa that you say? Nan and Grandpa. Yeah, I just want to make sure I get it right. Okay, so you've got Nan and Grandpa. Mom goes to prison. Are you getting shuffled back to Nan and Grandpa during that time, or are you having to go to foster care? What's happening?
Well, my sister was farmed out between my stepfather and his family at different points, and one of my mum's close friends. So she kind of did a circle. I actually went to stay with my dad for a time, which was completely awful. I didn't like it. They didn't want me there. And in fact, I couldn't wait to this is so strange. I couldn't wait to get back to my mum's home because I felt so unwanted there. Very strange kind of environment. And another time, funny enough, that my mum went to prison, I ended up staying in her flat while she was there because she'd only gone for a short period. And my father and his wife managed to persuade, what are they called? Like the social services people, people that deal with that they would keep an eye on me. And because I was I think I was coming up to 15. Yeah, it would be fine. So I stayed there, and I actually write about that in my book. Of course, at the time, I thought it was really cool for a brief moment. But yeah, when I look back and I think I would never leave my kids ever.
So, right. I mean, that's a big deal. But okay.
Yeah.
So what you said, you had talked about being farmed out. Your little sister was farmed out. So, I mean, is that what it felt like? You guys were just beings that needed a place to go. So here, this will work, or here, that will work. Is that kind of what you mean when you use that word?
Yeah. We that's another bit I write about in my book because it's a memory that I hold really close. I remember my mum had gone to court, and then she ended up going to prison. I had to go and pick my sister up from school, and I had to tell her while people in the background were making arrangements for mainly her. And I can remember thinking, no one actually wants us. No one loves us. And I'd picked her up from school, and we'd sat on the curb outside the school as all the other mums and kids were running home and that. And I can remember it as if it was yesterday, thinking, wow, we're really worthless. We literally are sitting in the gutter, completely worthless. So, yeah, you just felt like you were, just nothing, just a piece of shopping or something, or a piece of old furniture that someone doesn't want anymore.
Oh, ouch. Okay, so the next thing, gosh, I just want to give that room for a moment. That's painful to think about. Okay, so dad, stepmom don't want much to do with you, and you were eager to go back home when you had stayed with them. And even so, I think what I'm hearing is, even though it was chaotic and there was a significant amount of uncertainty, you knew you were loved? Or was it different than love? Or what? You see where I'm going?
I wanted my mum to love me desperately, and I'm sure she did. She had her own story that after she died, a lot came to light. Not making excuses, because people can still always choose to do the right thing, in my mind. But I think that's what I knew. That was my safety. So I would rather be somewhere where I know, somewhere I didn't feel safe, but that was what I knew. And I've come to understand that's what happens with a lot of women, kids that are abused. They go back to what they know, because what else have you got? And I think when you're younger, it's even more prevalent because you haven't experienced the world. And I hadn't experienced all the people that I've come into contact, as I've grown. It was a certain type of people. that's just what I knew. That's what I thought life was like. I now obviously realise it's not. Yeah.
So maybe there's a little bit of safety in just knowing what to expect.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're 16 and you're going out on your own. What did that look like?
I was actually excited, I think, because, I mean, it's a long time ago now, but I was excited more than nervous because I was always quite a dreamer and I always yearned for something more. As a kid, I'd sit and look at the stars and I'd dream about what I wanted, and, that was what kept me going. So, yeah, I got a job that didn't really pay a lot. I wanted to go to college but couldn't. We have we did when I was younger, YTS, which is a bit like an apprenticeship. I don't know if you have something similar, but you don't get paid a lot. You work a lot of hours. But for me, I liked it. It was a good place. I worked in a fancy dress shop. It was fabulous. The people that came in, there was lots of theatre types. Yeah, so I was starting to meet and see different lifestyles. So that was great for me. I didn't earn a lot. At points, I lived in some pretty horrible bedsits. At other points, I lived in some nice flats with other girls, as I started to earn a bit more money. Had a good career in fashion, in stores. Ended up managing some. So, yeah, it was exciting. And I was making my own friends. I was getting to dress how I wanted without someone slating me. My mum, as I grew, would spend a lot of time slating me and putting me down. And I think that was more to do with obviously how she felt about herself, but it stuck with me. I mean, for years, I thought I was fat. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was unintelligent. I thought I was crazy. It took me a good few decades to realise that's a pile of rubbish. But yeah, that stuck with me. But yeah, it was exciting, really quite exciting. I was still nervous because I was living in the same town that my mum still lived in. My mum still liked to go shopping or shoplifting. And of course, I worked in a shop. So I was very fit. Yeah, but luckily the first big store that I worked in, the ladies there, my manager, they didn't know all the ins and outs, but they knew that this lady was my mum, and they were so understanding to me. Like if ever she would come in, which was very rare, that was nice. And that probably was the first time that people didn't judge me on where I came from, but I didn't realise it back then. I've kind of only started to realise it now, that they loved me, for what I gave them in, I worked hard, I was good at my job. It didn't matter about the past, really.
Yeah, and it sounds like it didn't matter that I lost you for, there you are. It sounds like to them, you weren't judged on where you had been, you were judged for who you were in that moment. And even if mom came into the shop, they didn't hold mom's behavior against you at all.
No, they were fantastic. And like I said, I progressed. I started there as a part-time girl and progressed right up to, and I became a manager within the company in another town. But yeah, I did really well. And I was really proud of myself because I didn't expect that to happen. I expected to go down the same route of where I live and the people there. So yeah, I felt very, very blessed.
I'm wondering if it was in those moments when you were shown love. I'm going to venture to call it love. I think it is a form of love to see people for where they are and for how they're doing. Do you also think, because I'm thinking in my mind that was kind of the beginning of the next phase of your journey to find value in yourself? I mean, did it take another person believing in you first in order for you to start believing in you?
I mean, my nan and granddad always believed in me, and my nan was always not pushing, that's not the right word, but you're wonderful. She adored me. I was her one and only. So it probably started with them, and then this job, it was lovely people to give me a chance to actually do this job. So I did start to believe in myself and more confidence. I don't see it as I wasn't confident on the inside. I still felt the same on the inside, but I was able to mix more and do more and challenge myself more and do things that I'd never thought that I would ever do. I mean, it's been a long progress for me because I obviously carried a lot of that from childhood with me, made some bad decisions along the way. And I think you attract similar people if you haven't dealt with it. I mean, it was only as I wrote my book that I started to process that and sort of the situation I was in at the time with my ex and realise I'm still carrying a little bit of that little girl. I'm still allowing certain things to go on. So it's been a long process. But that definitely was the start and a really good start for me because it just made me feel like I could do more.
So it sounds like it was the first time outside of Nan and Granddad that you were able to feel like maybe humans aren't so bad.
Yes, definitely. And that people live a different way and think a different way and act a different way. So that gave me options. That meant, oh, okay, I could do that or I could be that. It made me look at myself, yeah.
Which is fascinating, right? When you can take that and look inside and go, oh, there's other possibilities. What about, like, it sounds like what you were describing earlier was maybe a bit like imposter syndrome. Like you were in this job and on the inside, you felt like you had no idea what you're doing, but on the outside, what was manifesting in your life was very different. What did that feel like to you? What was that like?
Well, I think I've been really close friends with imposter syndrome until very recently. I think he or she has lived within me for absolutely ages because of that, because I knew where I came from, but I knew that I didn't want to stay there. I wanted to go a different path. So to do that, you have to take these little steps and jump out your comfort zone. But inside, I was like, I felt, don't anyone ever discover my story. Don't anyone, even to the point where I'd be picking my children up at school and, you know, I wouldn't want anyone to know where I'd come from. And I wasn't ever one to put on airs and graces and things like that because I can't. But it was always there in the back of my mind. And the funny thing is that for a long time, people had been saying, you need to share your story. And it was only when I was going through some therapy that I was talking to this lady and we really got down to it. And I thought, yeah, I do. And it was only through sharing my story that I suddenly got rid of that, thinking, well, I've did it now. No one's going to find out about, you know, I've shared it. I've given it out to the world. So that released a very big weight off my shoulder. You know, I didn't feel like I was pretending anymore, though I wasn't pretending. It was just like I let that backpack go, I think.
Right, like the mask came off, kind of like you were still the person and this was just the mask, and you were able to hang the mask up and turn around and look in the mirror and say, this, I've always been this person, I just happen to have this mask on. Is that maybe a good description?
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't feel ashamed about that anymore. Once I shared, I didn't feel ashamed. I just, in fact, I felt proud. I was like, yeah, I am that girl. I am that girl that watched my stepfather watch my mum go to prison. I am that girl that sat on the bed crying alone. Yes, I am that girl, but I'm a whole lot more as well. And I should be proud that I've come from that place to where I am now. And that kind of was the first time that, I don't know why, that entered my brain. It was quite enlightening. It really, really was. Yeah, it was a moment. It really was a moment.
It sounds like so now, right now, it sounds like the way you view yourself is, yes, all of this happened to me, and I am also this person. It's not, it doesn't sound like it's either or. It's like almost like two halves came together.
Yeah. I've accepted that I am that girl from then. I am the party girl of my 20s. I am the mum or the divorcee. But I'm me. I'm Sophia. I'm all of those things, and that's wonderful. I suppose I've embraced it. That must be, you know, I've embraced, and I'm happy about that. I wouldn't have it any other way. I really wouldn't.
So tell me how you got from 16 years old and in this manager position to where you are now? Because it seems like you've got this confidence inside of you, and you can totally own who you are. I'm thinking there's a really neat journey in between having that job and who you are right now. And it sounded like there was a lot of fun in your 20s.
Yeah, there was quite a bit. It was nice. I think I am definitely more confident than I used to be. And that's been a process over the last few years. I had a full hysterectomy back in 2017, and that was a real big turning point for me. I really looked at myself and the relationship that I was in, how I was being treated. I went through therapy. And so the last 4 years, 3.5 years, has been a real transformation for me. And I am so much more confident than I was. But I think the big thing is I am just so happy with myself. I don't know if that's the right word, but comfortable. I'm comfortable with myself now. I mean, I had my fair share of bad choices of men along the way. Fortunately, both of my husbands. I understand why now. Both had wonderful qualities, but both had qualities really not so lovely that weren't compatible to me, you know. And I have made bad choices along the way, but none of the choices I made were predetermined. I think I did roll with a lot of things, you know, my jobs and first marriage, my children. I think having children really was my saving grace, because I was always determined. Well, first off, when I first fell pregnant with my first child, I cried for 2 weeks thinking, I don't know how to be a mother. I've never been taught. Surely I'm going to accidentally kill this baby. I was distraught, absolutely distraught. And then I just thought, and I had no one to help me. So I was worried. But when she came, after, you know, you ease into it, don't you? And I realised, wow, I love being a mum. And I'm going to make sure that these children have a completely different life to what I have. And in my mind, and I don't know if this is the right way, I should have been thinking, I thought I would just do the opposite, absolute opposite to everything my mother did, and surely I'll get it right. I'll get it right. That probably isn't the right way to look. But for a woman that has no one around to help her, and, you know, my kids are, I know we all say it, but they've turned out pretty well. You know, I've got a 22-year-old and a 13-year-old. They're both great kids. So thank you. I've done something right there. But yeah, it was a journey, but I just rolled with it, I think. It's been the last 3.5, 4 years where I've really thought, I need to deal with some stuff. I need to deal with some of those feelings from way back when I was a child, which I thought I had dealt with, but I hadn't. I'd just hidden them. I just kind of hid them away.
It's the worst, because you think you did it. You think you did it, and yet you didn't. Or maybe you kind of did.
Yeah.
It's just
I
hard.
think what I did was I just put a little plaster on it so that I could move out of that environment and go through my life in a fairly decent way. But then hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? When I look back and I think, oh yeah, that's why I made that choice, because I still felt like that little scared girl. And I said to someone before, it felt like I was carrying a rucksack, and it was just filled with all this guilt and shame and dirt and all that. And it wasn't until I dealt with it in my mind, and in fact, when I sat with the therapist and said, for the very first time at the age of, must have been 47, I think, I said, wow, my childhood was really crap. I think I used a different word, and she looked at me and she said, I'm so glad you've said that, because I kept saying, oh, it was really bohemian. Yeah, it was just all, you know, all this. I was glossing over, and it was then I thought, wow, I need to get to the bottom of this. So yeah, that's what I did. And that's how I came to terms with it.
Right. And it sounds like you did the best with the tools you had. I mean, if the best you could do was put plaster on the wall, if you will, right? Then you at least you got the plaster on the wall until you were in a position where you could deal with it, which you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is 3 to 4 years ago. So what happened 3 to 4 years ago that all of a sudden you're able to really kind of dive back in and understand? Maybe was it to get a better understanding, or is it to, I know there's a transition that happens, and I'm looking for the words right now, but if you know what I'm saying, just go ahead and answer that.
Yes, and had this hysterectomy. I had all these feelings, which I believe a lot of women have, which is, oh, I'm not going to be a woman again. It's a big thing to have all of that taken away. And my marriage wasn't very good. I was in counselling. I was putting a plaster on that as well. Everything came together at the same time. I think it definitely was meant to be that time. My counsellor and I was really in tune, and she really got me, and she was brutally honest. And like I said, I've been told to write things down previously, but just thought, no. I was like, oh no, I'm not doing it. I connected with an author who asked me to write a chapter in her book, and I was like, oh. And then I was out walking, and something just told me to do it. And for a child that couldn't spell or read, it was a big thing. But I thought, okay, let's do it. Let's just do that first one. What's the worst? And that kind of led to me writing one memory down, made another memory come up. And I was like, whoa. And I wrote that down. And then another one. And it just kept flowing. It just kind of not took hold of me. That's not the right words, but
like it just flooded out, kind of.
Yeah, and I had to keep going because it wasn't going to stop. And like I said previously, it was really therapeutic, but really scary as well. But it did make me face things, bad things and good things. And at the end of it, I mean, I had this. In fact, I did it on I wrote it on my little iPad, funny enough, and I had it all there, and I was like, oh, what do I do now then with it? And I was like, oh, do I do something without it now? But I was persuaded to send it off and get it all edited and, properly done. And then I thought, oh, okay. It just all rolled quite naturally. But once I'd got it down, I didn't want to look at it again. I was done. Yeah, I couldn't go back and reread it. And I haven't. I have the book here, but I haven't once. You haven't read the whole thing.
So, because you read for us the little piece earlier, but it's when you're writing this memoir, so you start, okay, let me backtrack here. You started with the one chapter or the one bit, and then that triggered the next one, which triggered the next one. Now, I'm thinking it was really hard to write about. So what were some of the emotions? Like when you're writing that first one, do you remember what those feelings were like?
Yeah. And in fact, the first one I wrote was about when I picked my sister up from school, because that's the one that brought a lot of emotion to me, because I was really, really, really close to my sister. I felt really protective. It brought up a lot of sadness, not anger, which is strange. I don't feel any anger towards my mum or my dad or anyone really. They had their crosses to bear, which they didn't bear very well. I think they've paid their price. But I felt sad for the little girl, really. I felt really, just like, I mean, some of the stories I kind of can laugh at now. Obviously not that one I read, but there are some in the book that are quite funny. And I haven't wrote about everything, but yeah, I felt sad, and I did feel that loneliness again. But I think towards the end, I felt, wow, you were pretty strong as a little girl. So I felt quite proud of her. I felt like, she was a little girl just sitting there, and I could see her and everything. I felt, a lot of the times I felt back there. I could see my bedroom. I could see the flat where we lived. Some of the people I started to see really clearly again. So it was a pretty amazing experience.
It seems to me like you were what you're describing, like you were able to give that child self of yours a big hug and say, wow, you were courageous and you were brave, and look at what you made it through.
Yeah. And I think none of us really like to big ourselves up, do we? We just don't. It's not it's not natural for us, but it did make me look at myself in a different light, where people had said things like that before. You should be proud of yourself, you're a strong person. I would think to myself, you really don't know me. But it did make me look, yeah. And people would say you're really confident. Well, I was thinking, well, I'm not being confident. I just don't want there to be a silence. And I was always very nervous about other people's feelings. So going through all that made me see her, that little girl, how these other people had been seeing her and maybe saw me. So it took on a whole new experience. It made me appreciate myself more.
I'm wondering what that feeling felt like. Was there a sudden realization that you appreciated yourself more, or was it something slow that just happened over time as you wrote the book?
Yeah, definitely slow, very slow progress. Yeah, it's still kind of maturing. I'm not quite where I want to be, but I spent years hiding really from everything and everyone and situations, and so now it's still a very slow progress, but I know I'm so much further on than I was. Yeah, it wasn't an automatic thing.
Yeah, it seems like from what you're describing, you're more confident than you would have been 3 or 4 years ago had I met you then, and that you're more accepting of the journey. And
I definitely, 3 years ago, a year ago, I probably never would have done this. For without a doubt, I wouldn't have done, because I would have worried about what will people think, or this or that, or I think children from environments where I grew up, the kind of environment I grew up in, are very take on board everything everyone else thinks, says, does, and I didn't really shed that. And now I'm kind of like, if people like me, they like me. If they don't like me, they don't like me. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I'm a lot happier in my own skin. So yeah, a year ago, we wouldn't be talking.
So, right. So let's see, how do I want to, so slow transition, all of a sudden you notice, like you didn't notice a year in or 2 years in. But now looking back, you can see that the changes that you've made, and you recognize, and I think I just heard you say also that there's still more to come.
Yeah, I think we all evolve. I think that's natural. We all evolve over time. I think mine's been very slow for quite a few years. Well, maybe quick, when I was a late teenager, and then slow. But these last few years, a lot quicker. But I definitely know I don't really like the phrasing becoming myself, but I'm just kind of allowing myself to be, and allowing people to know me and see me and know my story. I'm happy to share it with people now, which has made a huge difference, even with my children, because my 22-year-old didn't really know. She knew I had a different upbringing, but she didn't know all the ins and outs. So I feel quite liberated that even my children know, oh, mummy had a completely different life to we do.
And what I'm getting, that would be really interesting to share that with my kids. I also have teenagers, but if I had written my story and shared it with them, what was that like for you when you shared it with them? And this is what you read at the beginning. It's so intense and heart-wrenching. Do you think that they have a better insight of who you are and your wounds, and maybe a deeper understanding of who their mom is?
Yeah, definitely. My youngest hasn't read it because she's only 13, and she has asked her. And at first I was a bit not sure. And then I said, okay, she's quite mature. You can do if you want. I don't think she has yet. She might have started to. My eldest has read it. I was nervous about that, but she definitely understands me a lot more now, and that story, and she appreciates a lot more. I was always the mother from how as she was growing up, because I never let her do anything, never let this, never. And she said to me, Mum, I know why. You were strict and you were doing the best for me. Yeah, so we have a completely different relationship now, which is absolutely lovely. And yeah, she read it all, and I think she was a little bit shocked.
So sharing that vulnerable part of you and the part maybe you judged the most with your daughter changed your relationship with her. And so maybe now she's not as, I mean, I think all teenagers become bitter teenagers at some point, but because the 22, you're laughing.
And I think because I never got away with anything, I'm quite a hard mother, because to be fair, I have nothing to judge motherhood on. So I was, I would think my mum would take a belt to me if I said some of the things that she had said as she was growing up. And I had to keep reminding myself that wasn't normal. That wasn't a normal life, that teenagers do that. I read loads as she was becoming a teenager, kind of to get as much advice. But my life was so different. I never would have got away with any of that. But her behaviour was normal teenage behaviour. Yeah, so I had to that was a learning curve for me, definitely. Trying not to expect so much from them, because that was expected of me, and not being too soft, because I don't want to be like my mum, and I want to make sure I'm a good mum. Yeah, so yeah, that was definitely tough at points.
Yeah, for sure. So what was your first conversation with her like when she finished the book?
Just, what did you think? And she didn't put a lot into words. It was more how she acted afterwards. She'd become a lot more, she's always been quite affectionate, but really affectionate and really close, and yeah, some more supportive, really, and understanding, a lot more understanding.
So much has come just from sitting down and starting to write, because that's all you did with it. And then it just kept coming. What would you say to someone else getting ready to write a memoir or thinking of writing a memoir about how it helped you process through the pain and suffering and joy of your past?
I think you have to be prepared to really let go. And at first, I was very much, I can't spell, I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, in fact, it turns out that I actually am really good at all those things I thought I was really bad at. But I think once I let go, and I was really led by my heart rather than my head, thinking, oh, what do I need to write? How would someone else write? What's the right way to write? And just wrote what I wanted, as if I was talking. Once I completely let go, and I do that now, it just flows. It just really, really flows. And if you have a couple of mistakes, not the end of the world. The world's not going to collapse, is it? If there's where there should be something else. Just really let go and be prepared, I think, for those days where it does hit you. Because some days I crashed after writing, was very tired.
Like emotionally crashed?
Yeah, really got to me. And I cried over some things that I had never shed a tear for before. And they obviously needed to come out, so that was good. But it was quite shocking for me, thinking, oh, whoa. But I think you've just got to let go and go with it, and not ever worry about anybody else. What anyone else thinks, says or does is none of your business. Get on with what you want to do and just do it.
It sounds like in some ways you might be saying a little bit, be curious about your past, write about it and understand it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I thought I'd put all that to bed. I thought it had all gone. It was the past. I'm very much like that. Everything, get up, move along, forget about all that. But yeah, I think everyone's got a story to tell that can help someone else. And I mean, I didn't start writing it for that. It's happened that has happened. I've gone into schools and spoken to kids about resilience. Kids are living similar lives to that. And that is so humbling. So I think if you've got something to say it, because you really don't know who it's going to help, even if it's just yourself.
I like that at the end, even if it's just yourself, because it's healed you in a lot of ways, it sounds like. Okay, so 3 things that you would like the audience to know that might be tools in their tool chest so that they can have hope for their future?
So first, and I think I've always been like this, but only realised recently, you can fall, but you can't stay down there. And only you can pick yourself up. You can fall and stay, if you're feeling down, depressed, stay down for a week, stay down for a month, get yourself back up. And I think I've always been like that. I think I'm quite a stubborn person. So, yeah, I've always done that. And something I've learned and trying very hard to take on board now is, previously I always was a perfectionist. Everything had to be perfect, because then no one can pick holes in you, no one can, say anything. But in fact now, do some things that are imperfect and do them on purpose, because it actually is quite liberating. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. People will love you anyway. They really will. And probably do that thing that really scares you. If it really scares you, then you should be doing it. Because I've always been, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. Oh no, I couldn't go on a podcast. I couldn't do that. But now I think, if I say that to myself, no, I couldn't do it, I know I'm meant to be doing it, because that's the little devil trying to keep me. So do those things that you're scared of.
Thank you, Sophia, so much for coming on to Relatively Damaged and talking about the damage in your life and how you've overcome that and how you're still looking forward to continuing to overcome it. I really get this clear understanding that yes, it's a process, and yes, it keeps going.
Yeah, definitely. And no, thank you for having me. I've loved it. It's really, really been enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Relatively Damaged by Damaged Parents. We really enjoyed talking to Sophia about how she escaped an abusive home. We especially liked when she explained how writing about her traumatic journey helped her to heal. To unite with other damaged people, connect with us on Instagram. Look for Damaged Parents. We'll be here next week, still relatively damaged. See you then.